What's up, everybody? Hope you're having a nice day. We're going to be taking a look at another verse that a lot of people have a lot of confusion about. And hopefully, you got your thinking cap on because you're going to be thinking right along with me. We're going to be reasoning through this. What does this mean? And again, we're going over a verse like this because in the Bible videos we're making, we're looking at Jesus's ministry before he died and passages and scriptures in which Jesus references the final judgment, the last day, the resurrection of the dead, his second coming. And in this passage, a lot of people say that it's about the day of judgment. And we're going to look at that. We're going to talk about it. And so hopefully you got your thinking cap on. And one of the reasons people say it is about the final judgment is because the verses right before it talk about a person losing their soul. Luke chapter 9, verse 25, these are the words of Jesus that he actually spoke. For what is a man advantaged if he gain the whole world and lose himself? That's not good. Or be cast away. So both of those are not good. And ultimately, you gain the world in this life, you lose yourself in this life, and death brings the consequences of living a life having gained the world but lost yourself. Because before you die, if you lose yourself, but if you gain yourself and end up losing the world, then you can be saved. And when it says gain the world, what's he talking about? You have desires in life, godly desires, ungodly desires. God has created through his word a boundary for things that are allowable for our mind to think about and to act upon. So if we replace what God says is off limits outside of the boundaries with things that are within the boundaries, then at that point you went from gaining the world to losing the world, and you went from losing yourself to gaining yourself. But Jesus immediately after that, see here, people think this is a passage about judgment. So here is another passage associated with judgment, a type of condemnation. He says, these are the words of Jesus, whosoever shall be ashamed of me and my words. So Jesus' instructions. Are you ashamed of them? Jesus is telling his disciples that, and these were things that they were going to go through within their lifetime. They were going to face situations in their life where either they were going to have to obey Jesus' instructions or disobey Jesus' instructions. And obeying Jesus' instructions would have given them difficulties in this life. So Jesus lets them know either they are ashamed of him, they escape the consequences, or they are not ashamed of him. They confess him and deal with the consequences. And he said, you're going to face consequences in this life. But look what he says. Whosoever shall be ashamed of me and my words, of him. So here's an individual judgment. Of him shall the Son of Man be ashamed when he, so the Son of Man, in reference to Jesus talking about himself. In Daniel chapter 7, the Messiah is given the title the Son of Man. So that's where Jesus bases this terminology from, the Son of Man. He bases it on Daniel chapter 7, the terminology, the title applied to the Messiah. So Jesus, it says, when he shall come in his own glory and his Father's and of the holy angels. And so individuals, because this passage is about judgment, this one's about judgment, say in Matthew 25 talks about the judgment and mentions Jesus coming in the glory of the Father and of the angels, his own glory when he sits on his throne, a picture of judgment. And so it mentions Jesus coming in his own glory. Now, this phrase, and if you search the Septuagint in the Old Testament, this phrase, come in usually references the location of or the realm of. So it says here, Jesus would be ashamed of an individual when Jesus would come in the realm of or into, and the location of his glory, the Father's glory, the glory of the angels. So just like Jesus also mentions elsewhere, talks about him coming, so the Son of Man become, a reference to a future event. Yet he was already there, but he's talking about a future event. So there was a coming of the Son of Man Jesus was referencing, and he's talking about his ascension into heaven. So could Jesus here be referencing his ascension? Well, if Jesus died, resurrected, ascended into heaven, where he entered into his glory, wouldn't it matter whether or not you're ashamed of Jesus? Because he's in the presence of the Father. And if you're ashamed of him, he's in heaven, in the presence of the Father. He would be ashamed of you. And where would he be ashamed of you at? If this phrase means come into, is in a reference to his ascension, where would Jesus be ashamed of you at? In heaven, because that's where he would be, in his glory. So once Jesus ascended into heaven, individuals have the opportunity universally, worldwide, to be ashamed or not be ashamed. And the only way you can not be ashamed, because Christianity is a taught religion, so you have to be taught the gospel. In order to not be ashamed of it, you have to know what the gospel is. So that all comes through hearing. That's why in the Great Commission, Jesus said to teach other individuals, because Christianity is a taught religion. You teach it to your children, and they teach it to their children. So does it matter, though, being on the, you could say, bad side, right? You're not on the good side. You're not pleasing. Is it bad to be displeasing right now before Judgment Day to Jesus? It is, because in Acts chapter 12, you read about King Herod. And King Herod stepped outside of the boundaries that God has placed. And Jesus sent an angel to kill King Herod. Struck him with an illness. Eaten by worms. He died. So the fact that now Jesus is in his glory, and if you're ashamed of him, Jesus has the authority to put individuals to death and send them to punishment upon their death. So let me show you the passage where I was talking about the Son of Man become. Matthew 10:23. Jesus says, "But when they persecute you in this city, flee ye into another. For verily I say unto you, ye shall not have gone over the cities of Israel till the Son of Man be come." So Jesus just got done telling his disciples that they would be persecuted, but then he lets them know they're not going to go over the cities of Israel fleeing from persecution until the Son of Man be come. That's a reference to Jesus ascending into his heavenly kingdom upon his ascension into heaven. The Son of Man came into his kingdom. And then what happened? Then the disciples went over the cities of Israel fleeing in persecution. So this phrase here, the Son of Man become, that's a reference to Jesus ascending into his heavenly kingdom, which is the time marker for when their persecution would begin. So we don't find it too surprising where it mentions the Son of Man coming, and it's a reference to him coming into his kingdom. And you get into Luke chapter 9, verse 26, and it mentions the Son of Man coming in his glory. So the question is this Jesus coming into his glory, as in entering into his heavenly kingdom upon his ascension into heaven? Or is this a reference to him coming in judgment, as Matthew chapter 25 explains, using this same language, judgment language, using this same illustration? That's a good question, right? Because right after it mentions Jesus coming in his glory, it mentions the establishment of the kingdom. So could this be Jesus saying the Son of Man is going to come into his kingdom in your lifetime? That's what he says. There be some standing here which shall not taste of death till they see the kingdom of God. So either Jesus is explaining to his disciples the Son of Man had not yet entered into his glory, his kingdom, but he was going to, and it'd be in their lifetime. Or what Jesus was doing was explaining judgment, saying the Son of Man, the Messiah, is going to be the one who is the determining factor under the New Testament as to whether or not an individual is saved. Do they have faith in Jesus or not? Are you ashamed of Jesus or not? And then he talks about him entering into his kingdom. So it's just, is it the judgment and then the kingdom? Or he's telling them about the kingdom and then says it's going to be in their lifetime. I see it both ways, right? I can understand both viewpoints. I can understand both sides. So if someone wants to argue this way or that way, I see both sides. So, but that's a good verse, huh? That's a good verse. You can draw knowledge from both. You can draw knowledge from thinking about Jesus coming into his glory and the fact that he's in his glory, he's in heaven. You shouldn't be ashamed of him. Or this is about him being in heaven and coming in judgment. I see it both ways. Let me know what you think. What are your thoughts about this? It's not too difficult. It's like seeing someone walk down the street and you can narrow it down to two people, right? I know that's so-and-so or that's so-and-so, but I know it's not anybody else. It's one of those two people. So you look at this verse and you read that language and it's the same way. I know it's not this, and this, and this. It's either him coming into his glory or coming, as Matthew chapter 25 describes him, in judgment. So God bless you. Thank you for your time. As Jesus stated here, in the first century, the kingdom of God was established. You can experience the benefits of the kingdom of God by obeying Jesus. You can be translated, transferred, conveyed, placed into the kingdom when you submit yourself to Jesus. Believe in him. Be willing to change your life. Are baptized. Look what he says here. Jesus, his Father, delivered us from the power of darkness, translated us into the kingdom of his dear Son. Jesus said the kingdom would be established in their lifetime. Jesus died, resurrected, ascended into heaven, entered into his glory. He entered into his kingdom. And individuals have the opportunity to be partakers in the kingdom. What a blessing it is. I think that's actually, it uses that language too, partakers. Isn't it Hebrews chapter 12? We'll end it on this verse. But I thought that was a good study. Hebrews chapter 12. Oh, it's talking about receiving, which is basically partakers. Oh, Revelation chapter 1 talks about John being a companion in the tribulation in the kingdom. Maybe that's the verse I'm thinking of. But it says here, we receiving a kingdom which cannot be moved. So, thank you. Let me know in your comments your thoughts about Luke chapter 9, verse 26, and what you think that it means and what you think that it's talking about. God bless you. Have a nice day.